This is Robert Kraft, and I'm your host for SNN.Network. And joining me right now is Tom Equels. He is the president and CEO of AIM ImmunoTech. It's a publicly traded company. The symbol is AIM on the NYSE American. Tom, welcome back. Good to see you. How's everyone holding up?
Well, Robert, it's a pleasure to be here again, and we're doing really well in Ocala. That's where our headquarters is, and Ocala is a city. The metropolitan area is about 300,000, not a big city, but we have a remarkably low infection rate. There's only been about 200 cases so far during this entire pandemic, which is a very, very small percentage of the population. So we're grateful for that. How are you and your family doing?
Our family's doing well. You know, we're on lockdown, following all of the guidelines and safety ordinances here in Los Angeles, and you know, it's starting to slowly open up. I'm happy the beaches are open, and you know, I think we're, you know, hopefully we'll see it slowly open up more and more soon. So yeah, we're holding up well. But you know, I don't mean to segue here because look, even though there's so much going on the pandemic side, there's a lot that AIM is trying to do to combat what's happening here. So, you know, we last had you on in October 2019. The company has since entered the COVID-19 race with Ampligen. You know, can you explain a little bit more about the company's approach and progress thus far?
Well, when I took over about 3 years ago, we repurposed our experimental drug Ampligen. It has been was subsequently approved for commercial use by Argentina, but it's still got a new drug application pending for chronic fatigue syndrome in the U.S. that we're slowly working to try and figure out a path for approval. But the repurposing was to move Ampligen as an experimental therapeutic into the field of immuno-oncology. One of the qualities of Ampligen that is fascinating is its ability to modulate the immune system, and we observed through some early trials efficacy in experimentation that indicated that Ampligen might have a role to play, especially in conjunction with checkpoint blockade therapies. So as we sit here today, we have numerous studies underway at major research institutions, nationally recognized cancer research institutions. These trials are all investigator-sponsored trials that are fully funded by third parties such as DOD, National Cancer Institute, certain industry sponsors. And we are supplying the Ampligen. And so we're very pleased to see the progress we're making in cancer. When the new management team came in and we reoriented, we had very little cash, almost no Ampligen and no clinical trials. Now we have a very robust financial statement. We've manufactured 30,000 vials of Ampligen for use in clinical trials, and we have, I believe, 8 clinical trials right now authorized, several of which are well underway, including 2 major clinical trials in terms of their potential, dealing with Ampligen plus Keytruda as a therapy in advanced recurrent ovarian cancer, as well as stage 4 triple-negative breast cancer.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, because what's interesting is, you know, I've done a few interviews now with companies that have, you know, because look, COVID-19, this is a new indication for every company, right? And you're talking about how, you know, you have some other indications that you guys have been working on and have clinical trials underway, you know, so, you know, yeah, I start off the interview with covering COVID and that indication and the company's focus there. But tell us a little bit more about some of these other programs that are happening, and we'll come back to COVID in a second.
Well, these programs are extremely important because, I mean, you've heard people talk about having one shot on goal or two shots on goal. Each one of these clinical trials in oncology provides us with a tremendous opportunity, if we're successful, to create long-term stockholder value. Now, I mention these cancer trials because we're moving forward without backing off in oncology. However, there are some slowdowns that are associated with the work that we're doing, as well as these researchers publishing results, simply because these cancer facilities have a special problem with regard to COVID-19. You may not be aware of it, but cancer patients, which is, I mean, these are cancer institutes that are doing our clinical trials, but cancer patients generally, those that are in chemotherapy or surgery and chemotherapy, are at a special risk if they're infected with COVID-19. You're looking at mortality rates, severe symptoms at a range of 5 to 7 times greater than the normal population. So you know, they have insult added onto injury as they go through the chemotherapy process. If they should get infected, you know, their future becomes very bleak. And part of what we're doing is stimulated by the fact that those patients that we're serving in these clinical trials, and we like to think of them almost like our customers and trying to serve our customers, you know, what could we do to make a difference? Now, I was aware of studies that I had read in 2006 and 2009 where the National Institutes of Health contracted for studies comparing a number of different antivirals, including Ampligen, in animal tests that were designed to test these antivirals on a comparative basis against SARS-CoV-1. This is the virus that caused the SARS epidemic in 2002 and 2003. And in those tests, Ampligen was really the only one that showed any kind of significant effect. And I remembered that. And in fact, in the 2006 test, Ampligen was head and shoulders above any other antiviral. And it had cleared the viral levels, the viral titers in the lungs of the animals that were challenged to almost undetectable levels. And in the 2009 test, which was testing survival, Ampligen again was head and shoulders ahead of any other antiviral candidate. And in a control group that was infected with SARS-CoV-1, there was 100% mortality, but in the Ampligen group, there was 100% protective survival. Now, when I observed that this outbreak was occurring in Wuhan, China in December, you know, I noted, and it was just casual reading, but I noted it seemed to have many similarities to the SARS outbreak that had occurred, 17, 18 years earlier. So I started paying attention to it because I remembered the work that had been done with Ampligen and SARS. And as it developed, it became more and more clear this was a SARS-like virus that was occurring in China. And so with the help of Japan's National Institute of Infectious Disease, we obtained at an early stage the genetic sequences of a Wuhan virus isolate, which we then compared to the RNA sequences, especially related to pathogenesis in the original SARS outbreak. And lo and behold, that virus that's causing COVID-19 in those key areas was almost identical with 99% homology to the original SARS virus. They were different, but very, very similar, especially in the key areas. So knowing that, then we gathered our research team to come up with basically 3 concepts to help in this fight against COVID-19. And at the time, this was still principally a problem in China, so a lot of our planning was oriented on trying to get work done in China, but we also recognized the possibility of it traveling to the US, so we prepared on a parallel path for clinical trials and experimental activity in the US. Now, those 3 areas that we staked out with provisional patent applications are Ampligen as a vaccine enhancer, similar to the work we had done at Japan's NIAID and at the University of Alabama in clinical trials in humans, where you used Ampligen on an intranasal basis combined with an intranasal seasonal flu vaccine in an effort to promote enhanced vaccine activity, but also cross-reactivity and cross-protection, so that as the vaccine addresses a narrow band, the Ampligen, through epitope spreading, creates a broader immunity for mutations of that virus that the vaccine was designed on, as well as we saw with influenza, even other more distant variants of the influenza virus. So this is something we felt was very important, and we laid that out. We also laid out, because of our experience with Ampligen in influenza on an intranasal basis, the idea that you could use Ampligen intranasally to prevent the infection by the coronavirus. And some of this was teased out of our human experiments intranasally with FluMist. We wanted to test Ampligen intranasally, but in Japan, we were using an inactivated vaccine, or a dead virus vaccine. So we could administer the Ampligen and the vaccine at the same time in the monkeys. But when we got to the United States to do our clinical trial, there was no FDA-approved dead virus or inactivated virus vaccine that we could use intranasally. The only approved at that time intranasal vaccine that was out there was FluMist, which was an attenuated live virus vaccine. And Ampligen could not be administered at the same time because the Ampligen would prevent the FluMist from growing and shedding virus and creating antibodies if it was administered at the same time. So we had to administer the Ampligen 3 days later. Now, from a vaccine development standpoint, that makes a lot of sense. But if we reverse the logic in that, our thinking was, well, if you administer the Ampligen first and then challenge it with the virus, perhaps the virus can't take hold. You know, we wear these masks. You know, why do you think we're doing that? We're doing that because this pandemic virus comes in through the nose. Ampligen in the nose, we believe, has tremendous potential, and we're going to be trying to, move forward with clinical trials to establish it as a prophylaxis. In other words, something that prevents you from getting sick. If you think about it, that's extremely important until we have an effective vaccine. You know, it's important because you want to go out to dinner. You want to, you still wear the mask and everything, but if you get exposed, you have that inner protection. Think about when you get on an airplane, wouldn't it be nice the day before you got on the airplane to be able to take something that gives you sort of a mask from the inside out to help and avoid infection. If somebody in your family, God forbid, gets infected, you know, you can't make them stay out in the tool shed. You know, they're going to be in your house. You're going to be doing your best to cope with, if they're not in a position to be hospitalized with the situation, but you also have the risk that everybody else will get infected. Wouldn't it be nice to have an intranasal prophylaxis? So that's the second. And then would you like, do you have a question, Robert?
I do. I wanted to cut in here because, you know, it's interesting. You in your answer just there, you talked about how you saw the data on Ampligen for, and it more or less you saw positive data. It sounds like when it came to to SARS and to some other antiviral, or as an antiviral, right?
Yeah, if you go to our website and you look at the Ampligen as an antiviral slide deck, you'll see the very broad impact as an antiviral that Ampligen has established in preclinical activities with highly lethal viruses such as Ebola and even chemical warfare, biological warfare agents like Venezuelan equine encephalitis.
Right. Well, and that's what I want to hit on, because I'm just curious, because I bet other people are probably thinking this too, is, you know, how come it never got past the preclinical stage, you know, and it only really stayed there, and yet it showed some kind of efficacy in some way.
Well, the problem was that even though it was showing tremendous preclinical efficacy, I mean, you know, when you compare a control group with 100% mortality to the Ampligen group with 100% protective survival, and that's with very, very few symptoms even, that's extremely significant. But the reason it didn't go anywhere is there was no longer a SARS outbreak. The epidemic of SARS was extinguished in China probably by 2004. And so even getting permission to move forward with things like orphan drug status, and it was blocked by the fact that the disease was no longer considered to be problematic in any respect. Now, you know, using hindsight, if we had, you know, been able to continue with that research and develop a vaccine, that would be great, because it might have helped us with this one. But it's impossible to develop a vaccine for a disease that doesn't exist. You know, I mean, you can't get the funding for that. You can't get the governmental approvals for that. But I believe things are going to be changing from a public policy standpoint, because now we have a heightened sensibility as to things like coronaviruses and influenza. I mean, there are mutations of the influenza virus that could be far worse than what we're experiencing with COVID-19. So this is the time for people to pay attention, both in and outside of government, and demand that we be proactive in our pursuit of vaccines, prophylactics, and treatments for future viruses that may develop. Because you can be assured that we're going to experience those, but we can't take the attitude that, well, we have to wait till it happens before we start doing something.
Right, and that, you know, you pretty much alluded to what I was going to ask you next, because I'm sure there's some people watching this that might be, well, is there a risk that, let's say, you know, another company comes up with a vaccine or treatment, or, you know, even another prophylactic, that, you know, now Ampligen then again gets stuck in preclinicals because of that? You know, what's the risk factor there for you guys?
Well, that risk factor is minimalized, because I hadn't gotten to the third component, which is Ampligen intravenously as an early onset therapy for COVID-19. We have a tremendous safety profile of approximately 100,000 doses in humans IV. And with that safety profile and the preclinical activity in SARS-1, we've been able to get FDA authorization for a clinical trial at Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center that possibly will involve some other sites in New York as it grows, to test Ampligen, initially Ampligen alone, and then once a period of time has gone by, adding alpha interferon to the Ampligen combination as a therapy for early onset COVID-19 in cancer patients. And you know, the cancer patients are already in the hospital, so it makes it very easy to identify them and administer the therapy. And this will be a good test of Ampligen as a therapy. So we're already in the clinic now in COVID-19 once that trial starts. The authorization has just been obtained, so it may be several weeks before it actually commences. But that's pretty much up to Roswell, you know, the start dates and everything, because they're recruiting the patients and so forth. But we're moving forward in the clinic with the first FDA authorization for Ampligen as a part of a COVID-19 clinical trial, having happened just recently. But we're also going to be seeking to test in the clinic our Ampligen as a prophylaxis and Ampligen as a part of a vaccine enhancement program. So we're putting a lot of push into those three areas, and we're making a lot of progress, because unlike SARS, this is not going to just go away. And unfortunately, you know, my original planning was that I was going to have to do most of this work in China, and I was trying to start in China as rapidly as possible. But it's quickly turned out that the place to be doing this research is in the United States, and this is where the need is. And you know, I can think of nothing better, you know, for our team who are very devoted to creating immunological solutions for unmet medical needs for purposes of having better health in our country. So we look at this as part of our patriotic duty to move forward and try and make a difference by creating therapeutics and vaccines that will help in this pandemic.
Absolutely. And guess what? You know, we're all rooting for you. We want.
Thank you, Robert.
Look, we are. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I mean, like I said, I've been talking to many biotech companies, especially in the microcap space right now, you know, that are working on whether it's a vaccine, treatment, prophylactic, you know, or testing kits. And at the end of the day, we want you all to succeed. We need it, you know? And so my next question then is, because I'm sure from an investor's perspective, people will want to also know, are you guys funded? Is everything, are you going to be able to, you know, we want to make sure that you're well funded through all these clinical trials, because it's going to be, you know, even though things it sounds like are fast tracked, at the same time, it still costs money, right?
Well, it does. And for some of the clinical work that we're going to do in COVID-19, it's not as easy to pick up grant funding as it is in cancer. There's a very well-funded system of grants for cancers, especially the ones that we're working in, like advanced recurrent ovarian cancer, stage 4 triple negative breast cancer. The reason that funding is available there is because there are no therapies when people get to that stage of the cancer, and if we're able to make a difference, we can save a lot of lives. So you know, our proposition there is to create new therapies, and the funding is in place. Now with COVID-19, we may have to take some of our funds to move these programs forward. We're intending to help with the funding of the clinical trial at Roswell for early onset COVID-19 in cancer patients. And as we develop these other clinical trials, you know, our funding may be a part. But we are in the best, we just ended the quarter on the 31st of March, and I'm happy to say that we are in the best end of quarter financial situation that this company's ever been in. We'll try to be very very astute in the funding of our COVID-19 work and get as much grant money to fund that. For example, much of the Roswell project is going to be funded through the National Cancer Institute because this is very important for cancer patients. So there are sources of funding for these COVID-19 projects that we'll try to tap into, but we believe it's important to move rapidly as well. So we will be using some of our money to move the research forward so as to try and make a difference at the end of the day. Because discovering the therapy 2 years from now is not what this is all about. We need to develop a prophylactic therapy now as rapidly as possible, because if we do that, arguably there are tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of lives that can be saved by rapid development. So we have to be not penny wise and pound foolish. If we have to move forward and move forward quickly, we have to be prepared to fund some of that research ourselves.
Very good. So one of my last questions then here is, this is a race. We want to get this done, as you said, as fast as possible. You mentioned that you guys got the FDA authorization for the first human Ampligen trial in COVID-19 for COVID-19 patients with cancer.
Technically, Roswell got the authorization. Roswell's the sponsor,
right?
Investigator sponsor. We're supplying the Ampligen and we're supplying funding.
Got it. Okay. So then what are the next steps then to get this across the finish line, from what you can tell us?
Well, the repurposing into oncology was not the only change that we made. We also changed the name from Hemispherics to AIM. But the old company, let's call it, had a business plan that contemplated becoming a big pharma company. Part of the change in business strategy that I implemented is to abandon that idea and focus on being an immunological research and development company. So we focus on developing these drugs to a stage where we become an attractive candidate for licensing or acquisition in oncology and chronic fatigue and as an antiviral. And we have 2 drug candidates that we're working with, both of which have value. Right now, we're focused principally on Ampligen because I believe Ampligen's time is right now. It's immunological therapies are the key to many of the problems that we face in public health. It's certainly a key in cancer, and that's been recognized over the past several years. And it's also a key to unlocking broad spectrum antivirals and broad spectrum vaccines, so that every time a virus mutates, the vaccine doesn't become ineffective. So this is what Ampligen, we believe, offers, and that we're trying to deliver right now. And I believe that Ampligen is the shape of things to come in virology as well as oncology.
Well, with that, Tom, where can my audience go and find more information about AIM ImmunoTech?
Well, I ask you to come to our website. It's AIM Immuno, AIMIMMUNO.com. And, please visit our website. And we try to keep everybody advised of the progress we're making. So we appreciate your interest. And we're going to work very hard to make a difference in both of these areas that we've talked about today.
Thank you so much, Tom. Again, we wish you the best of luck. Yes, we wish you the best of luck. Thank you. Stay safe. And I look forward to the next update.
Be well.